I'd like to introduce Matt Rinaldi.
Yep.
How are you, Matt?
I'm doing fine.
Okay. Matt, we received the comptroller, state comptroller's report in regards to R. Carlson and the city place development. And that's pretty much, we just wanted to bring it down and maybe hear if you could explain the report to us, and if any members of the council have any questions, we could shoot back and forth with you.
Okay. Well, I was provided with the report. I did review it. Obviously, I'm not, state controller's office. I'm just reviewing it, just to see what's going on. I wasn't privy to any of it at the time. Obviously, I wasn't the assessor at the time. So I pretty much would, if anybody has questions and maybe help explain some things, I'd leave it open. Whoever has anything to say. Okay.
Well, first off, one question that's been mentioned in the public and has been brought up within the council was the potential for going after bond, we're trying to go after any kind of money. Was there any kind of money misplaced or lost in this?
Well, as far as I have, the one thing I have done after reviewing it, I did reach out to the Bergen County Board of Taxation, Robert Layton, who's our supervisor as assessors. As an assessor, we answer to the County Board of Taxation, and ultimately we answer to the Division of Taxation. I do want, the one thing I did read with the report, when they said they were sharing it with the Division of Taxation, their Division of Taxation ultimately is who makes the call on, because they oversee us. But when I did speak to Bob Layton, there's really, as far as tax appeals, they're year to year. In the state tax court, every tax appeal, even if it's the same property, has a different docket number for the year. So that's really what the situation is. So in the initial talks I've had, there's really no recourse. Because once it's done, for example, if an individual person appeals to the county board of taxation and they're not in agreement with that judgment, they have 45 days from that judgment to appeal it through. Once that goes, that's it exhausts the appeal process. I did reach out to the Division of Taxation, and I haven't officially reached out to them. I reached out to them informally. I was calling on another matter, and they mentioned a few things, but they haven't done anything yet. So I don't know what they're planning on doing. They did mention you can get a Deputy Attorney General's opinion, which is where, so I mean, what I could do, with all due respect to the borough, is I can make a formal request to see if there's anything we can get back from the Division of Taxation. But as far as my understanding with the report is the Office of the Controller made recommendations. They referred it to the Division of Taxation. No criminal charges have been brought up. And as far as what recourse they have to then get back to us. So I can officially make a request for that.
And Mayor, I want to elaborate that I've also reached out to our risk manager, Dave Laza, who maintains the bonds for the employees, and as a result of no criminality, there is no recourse as far as calling in the former employee's bond, because there was no criminality involved. Essentially, you have the controller making the opinion of statutory guidance here. And I think perhaps Mr. Bedish, it would be good for Mr. Bedish, who handles our tax appeals, to perhaps mention about the Crabtree decision, which is the rationale for some of what the assessor did at City Place, and that can help explain.
Not a problem. The tax assessor had relied on the decision put out by Judge Crabtree, and I guess just to back up a minute, the way that a unit in a condominium complex or any other residential unit is typically valued is based upon comparable sales. They would take other similar properties that had sold within 1 year and then make a decision based upon that as far as what the value of the property would be. However, the Crabtree decision carved out an exception to that common way of valuing a property. And what it essentially does is it takes condominium complexes, and if there's a finding put on the record to show that certain units, notwithstanding all of their efforts to try selling it, have been unable to do so for a prolonged period of time, there could be a finding made that the condominium complex is what's called a failed condominium. And what happens at that point is, rather than valuing it based upon the comparable sales, you would instead value it based upon the income that could be derived from the units. Essentially, what the seller would be doing is, in order to avoid going into bankruptcy or going under, they would then take the units that they had originally intended to sell and instead rent them out in order to try recouping some of their losses. And so for the period of time that this building is deemed to be a failed condominium, the valuation could be based upon the income approach and the rent that would be derived, as opposed to what the comparable sales would be. Now, this was an established decision. It's not the norm. It's the exception to the norm. And a finding has to be made that it's deemed, the building has been deemed to be a failed condominium. Now,
How long ago was that?
the decision was in the early 2000s it came out. So it's established, it's precedent. And it's been used in other circumstances. There's been other municipalities where this decision has been used, and courts have applied it. Our assessor at the time used that decision to create a valuation where certain units would be valued based upon the income approach, whereas other units that had actually sold previously would be valued based on the comparable sales approach. Based upon the Crabtree decision, there is precedent to say that this is something that can be done.
Quick question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you before I get my
that's fine.
question. What's the vacancy level that would kick into? In other words, what percentage of vacancy was that established?
The decision doesn't go into that level of specifics. Really, it's more or less the effort that was made and the amount of time that's passed where efforts have been made to try selling the units and they weren't able to sell, generally because of the market. So that was the decision that our assessor at the time relied upon, and the comptroller's report had still found that the decision to do that resulted in an inequitable result. However, that being the case, that's really where it lay right now. And now we're waiting, I guess, to formally petition the Division of Taxation to find out whether or not, I guess, they would agree with that finding and what actions they feel would be appropriate.
I mean, that's the recourse we have at this point. But as far as, I mean, Bill will tell you, is, when you're doing tax appeals, in general, and when there's judgments made, people appeal, some people don't appeal, even a single-family home that appeals, and they receive a reduced assessment because they're victorious in their appeal, that less tax that not that the tax went away, it's just that difference, the taxable base, gets spread around everywhere else. So it's not, I mean, in my opinion, I'm not privy, I'm not the tax collector at the time, but it's not like the money went somewhere else, it just got, unfortunately, spread around to the rest of the tax lines.
I'm confused, because here it says, Mr. Carson's interpretation of the law is incorrect. Aren't there possibilities of a civil suit of some way of getting that money back? Outside the normal appeals? Well, someone should answer that.
I'm not a lawyer, so.
I asked the lawyer last month ago, and I didn't get an answer.
Well,
That's a disgrace that we lost $400 and some thousand because someone made, quote, a mistake. He misinterpreted what his job was or whatever.
Did we lose it? We didn't lose it. We just spread it out throughout the rest of the tax base.
It got spread around the rest of the tax base.
Instead of coming from them?
Yes,
Right.
the rest of us paid for it.
But I think,
May I ask a question? At this time, however, the assessments have changed, right?
Yeah, the Borough of Edgewater went through a reassessment for 2011 tax year. For lack of a better term, all the values have been reset
They've
with
all
new
been
data. And just to go through, the one thing I did check with the county board when I was up there this past week, in 2008, we had 231 tax appeals, 2009, 172, 2010, 202. This past year, we've had 39 tax appeals.
All 2011?
Yeah, filed with the county tax board. Now, some appeals, the one thing that doesn't take into account, there are some appeals that are filed. If a property is valued over $1 million, it can be directly filed to the state tax court. I don't have those exact numbers, but the main thing with the revaluation and just in real estate in general, as a lot of people are aware, it's been out there since 2008. I mean, 2006 tended to be the peak of the real estate market for residential in June of '06. But since the Lehman Brothers collapse in 2008, there was a major corrections going on. And that's what precipitated I wasn't here when the reassessment was applied, but that's what precipitated going through revaluation, trying to bring the values in line. Now, the only other way to correct values year to year, there's obviously the appeal process. Other changes that are made year to year are subdivisions, when a property subdivides, new construction. There is clauses in there if a property isn't put on through mistake, through clerical error, you can go back the next year and do an admitted assessment 2 years back. Changes are made up to appeals, reassessment, municipal-wide reassessment, revaluations, which are a little more involved. You had a reevaluation in 2008. There is one other clause you can do, and this is something that we're going to look forward to going into the next year after we get a full year of the reassessment. You can do compliance plans, what they call compliance plans. You have to file it with the Board of Taxation at the county level. You can't change more than 50% of your properties. But in the event there was a particular neighborhood, everything's breaking down by neighborhood. And I don't know if the website's still up from appraisal systems, which did the reassessment. And it's very informative if everybody wants to go on it. They have each neighborhood. And with all the condo developments, they were treated as neighborhoods. And it has sales they relied upon, which Mr. Bettis said, was a 2-year look back. And then within that neighborhood, we're going to run analysis this year to see if there's been discrepancies. If you get this major difference from what maybe other parts of town are paying, and you can argue to the county with a compliance plan to either bring it up or bring it down, that's a way of correcting it. That's a way of maintaining it well. But you can't just go, if it's like an individual homeowner or somebody that maybe bought the house and maybe they bought a lower assessment, you can't just necessarily go in and change it based on that one sale, because that's illegal. That's actually spot assessing. And it's, but there are ways of looking at condo developments and even just neighborhoods, single family homes.
So if I was to buy a brand new, if I was to buy a home, and let's just say I paid $500,000 for it,
Yeah.
I couldn't set my assessment at whatever my purchase price was?
Not necessarily. If you do appeal it and say that price is below the
Comparable.
assessment,
Okay.
and it's comparable to other sales, and you bring that, you would
I see.
feel it's exposed to the market properly, that's fine. Now, the other flip side, I know this is difficult times, not just everywhere, but people lose track of in increasing markets when sales happen that are above the assessment. We don't go and can't change the assessment just because of an increase in sale. That's what happened when the revaluation happened. You did the revaluation in 2008. Revaluations don't happen that simplistically. You have to petition to the state of New Jersey, Division of Taxation. You have to submit tax maps. It's a lot of process going on, and but that's when a lot of, not just Edgewater, there was about 13 other municipalities in Bergen County that did revaluations, and unfortunately some of them did it at the peak of the market because prices were going up, and if they weren't timed properly, that's where a lot of them have done reassessments to try to correct.
2 questions.
Sure.
One, commercial properties on the same assessment calendar as residences?
Yes, commercial properties.
So it's the same year and everything? Some
Same
states
year.
have it every 3 months.
Every property is assessed as of October 1st of the pre-tax year.
And corporations don't get extra assessments.
Actually, the one thing Bill's talked about typical with the residential, the sales comparison, corporations and with the reassessment, I reviewed some matters that have even been pending with appeals, they're treated primarily in an income approach valuation, what income they could produce, less allowed vacancy, less operating expenses, and then they're capitalized at a return to produce the value.
So, and the comparability of land, how do they make that comparable? What do they use for comparability? Because we saw a tremendous drop in the land assessment.
They have
5% on that property.
They have dropped, I mean, part of the reassessment, and I did meet with the reassessment company just to get a better understanding. It's an evolving thing as I'm getting my feet wet with it. They have lowered the values in general, in land assessments. In general, it was warranted. The land sales are very difficult. I mean, there are a lot of land sales that are happening that people don't even know about in Edgewater. For duplexes, which is a tear down, that's a land sale.
No, I'm talking about the land on a functioning corporation. There's a land value and a business value, as there is in the colony.
Sure,
Right.
sure. Well,
So what did they use to make that comparison?
as far as, Councilman Jordan, I'd have to get back to you further, and especially if you specifically said a colony, I don't have the actual comparable sales per se. They allocated, they had a land value that was, assessments two parts, land improvement. You only appeal the total assessment, unless it's just land, vacant land. They did values in 2008, based on whatever land sales it did. I'm not privy to that information at this present time. I could
When you say land sales, where are the land sales?
Well, there's been residential land sales. There are with tear downs. That's a residential land sale. A tear down. Somebody tears down a property and subdivides it off. There's happened in duplex on Undercliff. There haven't been as many recent ones, but there were a handful.
And you tear it down and build on the same spot? Is it?
Well, as a builder buying a home, tearing it down, the cost of demolition gets added to that cost. That's the value of the land. I mean, that's what happens in developed areas. It's, you know.
I don't see how that's possible, because there's one corporation that got a significant decrease in the land portion, and there hasn't been any land sales.
As far as commercial land sales, I'm not aware of any in this past year or
Right, so what should they use for comparable?
Well, Councilman Jordan, I'm not, you know, the land values were reduced in general across Edgewater as part of the reduction. They were in general reduced.
For the corporations?
For residences, for corporations, that's been part of, I don't know, there's not an overall numbers drop, but there was a reduction in the values because of the market drop.
Can you take a look at that and give us some information?
Sure.
This is, some land didn't go down at all, and others went down 35%. That's a huge drop.
I'll look into it, see if there's anything.
Anybody else have any questions? So our recourse at this point would be to request an answer from the state
Yeah,
division of taxation.
Yeah, I think just to bring this around full circle, the comptroller does not have jurisdiction over tax assessors any more than the municipality does. That's the reason why the comptroller's report referred it to the division of taxation. So really, it does fall on the division to have the final say over how this is going to be moving forward. So it would be incumbent on the borough then, in the interests of the borough, to reach out formally to the division and find out how it intends to proceed, what recourse it would recommend, and really they would have the final say over that. So I guess if perhaps the council could direct Mr. Rinaldi to make that formal request.
Are there lawyers that specialize in this area?
Yeah.
Well, in the area,
Dealing with state process?
At this point in time, I think that we would have to wait to find out how the division wants to proceed before that kind of a decision could be made as far as, because we'd have to know what recourse they have in mind before we can really determine that.
No other questions?
Mayor, if I may, just so we're specific enough in this letter, because I'm sure Mr. Rinaldi will ask, well, what should we do with this letter? I think the letter should be pointed enough because the question that seems to be the common thread is I'm trying to say this because, again, it's not that we lost $472,521. But that's the dollar value that the assessor had placed on the modifications in these assessments. So perhaps if we write a pointed letter specific to that number and have them get back to us in a timely manner as to perhaps what the division plans on doing, and if they can provide some guidance as a recourse to that 472,000.
But again, to clarify, going forward, not in this letter, but going forward, the assessments have been readjusted on the property, correct?
On City Place, yes, they have. And actually, the whole municipality, they have.
Madam, the 39 appeals that we have, were they done, were they settlements or appeals?
I wasn't
Some were
involved, but some were settled, but it's my understanding that, because in the interim, after Mr. Carlson resigned and before I was appointed, there was, Appraisal Systems was defending the majority of them at the Bergen County Board of Taxation.
No other questions? All right, Matt, I'd ask that you stick around. We're going to open it to the public now, just in case there's any questions we need answered.
Sure.
So at this time, I'd like to open the meeting to the public. Mary?
Thanks.
Mary Hogan, 606, right here?
Yeah,
Yeah, fix that.
Yeah.
Mary Hogan, 606, Ridgewood Avenue in Edgewater. I find it very insulting to say that, for you to say, all of you, or those of you who have spoken, that we didn't lose $474,000. I did, because you know what? I picked up and I paid for this corporation for 2.5 years. All of you that pay taxes paid this. So don't say we didn't lose it. We certainly did lose it. And I'm one of the people that lost it, and I'm pissed. I'm really annoyed that the attitude is, oh, well, there's nothing we can do. Yeah, you can. Write to the state. Go after the state. In terms of the reevaluation for these properties, City Place, one of their properties went down even further. That was owned by 123, the Promenade. Went down even further. And none of them came up to adjust to that discounted 45%, 56% that they went down. Nowhere, anywhere, in any of the things that we've received does it say, Carlson said this. I didn't see any of that. His letter didn't say that. His letter to the controller didn't say that. His letter to the controller said that he thought this company was going bankrupt. Bankrupt! Then you read what the company is. They've got $1 billion in international, the parent company of 123, the Promenade. Billions of dollars. The attorney said, I never said that we were going bankrupt. And you're now justifying what he did, saying, well, the properties were, they couldn't sell them. Well, guess what they probably rented them for? Probably over $2,000 a unit. That's our standard things down in this area. This property happens to be right on the waterfront, has off-street parking, has stores right there. I would think that's, but nowhere does that come up that Carlson said, well, I based it on the rentals. What rentals? Where did that come up from? Where is that proof? As far as I know, every one of those units were issued COs. Every one of them. Which means they could have been rented if not sold. And to just step back and go, well, we didn't lose it. Well, I did. You did. Barbara did. You did. Anybody that owned a piece of real estate in this town. Not only lost, we paid for this corporation for 2.5 years, part of their taxes. And it's not sufficient to say we didn't lose it. Yeah, we did. Well, I did. I mean, maybe you didn't lose it, and, you know, Mr. Rinaldi didn't, because they don't live in town, but I did. The appeals on these properties went only to the county. They never went to the state. They never had a docket number, they only had a number from the county. At which point Carlson dropped it. With no justification, I've never seen anything as to what he dropped it for. And you just say, no, we didn't lose it. Come on, guys. I mean, you know, it sounds nice to the public, but as a taxpayer in this public, I'm not accepting it. And you better do something to try to get it back. Everything you can to get it back, you better do. In terms of Mr. Carlson's other things, in terms of what I have been looking at, and I'm glad that you're here, Mr. Rinaldi, because this is some question. There was a piece of property called 15 Valley Place, which was purchased by Mr. Rosen as his affordable housing. And in July of 2009, Mr. Carlson wrote a letter to Ms. Diana Cohn, the tax collector, and told him that he had changed the assessment on it to $190,000, which was the actual value of this three-family house that had previously been assessed for $800,000. So it wasn't until the deed was filed when he sold the or not sold, he really gave it to the Housing Development Corp., which is Bergen County's, I believe, their affordable housing, in 2009. In that deed, there was a deed restriction that it was to be used for affordable housing. And when the assessment came in 2011 on that property, it went up to $228,000. So now the company that really is an affordable housing company is paying more than the developer that said he was using it for affordable housing, but didn't have a deed restriction on it to be used for affordable housing. They also list the property right now as having a land value of $1,000. And even on Hudson Terrace and Valley Place, I don't think $1,000, any property is only worth $1,000. It may be because it's now owned by the housing development that it's lower. But if you add that and make it $100,000, which is what it was when the developer owned it, would then be $328,000, and the previous owner paid on $190,000. I don't get that. I asked for properties, Mr. You'll be interested in this. I asked for the property valuations because in the colony, with the decision of Judge Bizzuto, because the colony is a land co-op, the individual homeowners can appeal their taxes on the houses and not on the land. Only the colony corporation can appeal the land. The individuals can appeal on their houses. So I asked them, because we should know what the houses are assessed for, and they did that when this judgment had come down. And when I totaled them up, their total amount is less than what you have on the tax rolls.
In terms of the land value or the road value?
In terms of the property, the improvement values, the houses. If you add the total of what he gave me as to what everything was worth, it's less than what's it is being assessed for. There's something totally, absolutely wrong with all of this. There's so many problems in so many different areas that I don't think we can sit and say,
We have to go all the way.
it was fine.
Mary, no one ever said it was fine. I agree with you that we took the hit as a taxpayer, but as the amount raised in taxes was the
First of
same.
all, excuse
So
me,
there
but
was no money
this is the
lost.
public session right now.
There was no money lost.
Yeah, there was money lost to me. I'm sorry. You may
To me-
not
to
think
me
it's
as
money.
well.
So why aren't you pissed?
Matt, did I ask you that before?
Why aren't you gonna do
That it was
something
dispersed
about
to
it?
the rest of the taxpayers.
We're
What's
trying
our
to figure out
recourse?
what it is we can do.
We're trying to figure out what we can do.
Well, one of the things is I certainly would contact the state
That's
Well, that's what we just voted to do.
and make it a little bit stronger letter than what you said back to the letter you sent to the controller's office, which was totally,
The Attorney General.
I didn't get that at all. I really didn't get that letter at all. I don't know if any of you had even read the controller's report before you sent that letter out. that, yeah, there might have been a glitch in the system. I mean, are you kidding me? $24 million, and assessment's gone. And you know, well, not only us lost, the school lost. The school's taxes, what they get from us is based on our total assessments across the board. When you drop 24 million, they got less money. They got less money. So people did lose, including the children of Edgewater.
Mary, excuse me, Mary, the colony issue that you brought up, I just want to make sure Matt has it so he can check it. You said there was a discrepancy in 2 documents.
I requested a list of the housing portion of the improvement portion, and they gave me a list.
Well, when you say they, I'm just
The
to
tax
clarify.
assessor's office. I mean, I don't know if it was Mr. Carlson or just the people
All right,
that
but I
work
mean,
there. and that
currently, or
was-
since the reassessment?
I just picked one up.
Since the
Yes.
reassessment.
And I totaled it all up, and that total is less than what's on the assessment for them. What I did not find on it was the, and I may just not have been under the right name, was the, your clubhouse, I don't know what.
Oh, the community
Yeah,
center?
the community center.
Yeah.
I didn't see that there, so maybe he had dropped that off, and that was the difference. I don't know.
Could be, could be. It's a big problem.
But he didn't do it.
The
There
smoke
was
and
one.
mirrors, there's no systematic
No.
thing. It's just,
All right, thank you,
they're
Mary.
waiting.
Anyone else wish to be heard? Mr. Henning?
Thank you very much. I don't want to cut into my 5 minutes here, because I get cut off in mid-sentence routinely, because I have legitimate grievances here, and the mayor doesn't like himself. Time's up, as usual. May I have your card, and I'll give you this information, so it's not within my 5 minutes?
Mr. Hanu, I know you called my office today. Earl called, my assistant called back. You're more than welcome to stop by. I am here 3 to 6 on Wednesday.